Welcome everyone on our webinar. Today we will talk you a bit about AIQE, which is AI-based quality estimates. And for that, we brought you some expert on the topic from TAUS and from ModelFront. But before getting into that, let me just quickly talk a bit about the housekeeping parts of this. The webinar itself is recorded and will be available on our site. You will receive a follow-up email when the webinar is there. And also all of you who are here will receive the QA sheet as well with all the answers. We will have about a 45-minute presentation, and then we will have time for the Q&A part as well. Please make sure to use the Q&A section of Zoom and post your questions there. Then we will answer all of it at the end of the presentation and discussion part. So let me just quickly introduce our guests and presenters. So from TAUS we have Amir Kamran, who is a solution engineer there. We have the co-founder and co-CEO and CEO, of ModelFront, Adam Wittlenmeyer. And from memoQ, we have Levente Bundik, who is one of our solution engineers. And we have Arpad Figyelmesi, who is the head of product, and he will help us answering your questions here. So without further ado, let me just quickly give the mic to Adam.
So, hi, folks. At some level here, we're here today just to talk about faster human translation, more efficient human translation. A lot of folks, right, when they hear quality scores, they think this is really about quality, and often in translation we think that we just kind of associate quality with slower. It's quite the opposite. We're here to talk about faster human translation, and there are ways when you're more efficient that you can then improve quality, but fundamentally, right, we're here about the efficiency. So if you kind of back up conceptually and you ask yourself, why is human quality translation slow? Despite the fact that, right, really this AI kind of started in this field, right? The transformer model came out of, translation came out of my old team at Google, in fact, right? All of this stuff that's happening now in other areas kind of happened in translation in 2017. But it's actually like super disappointing. Like, if you're a buyer, you're like, okay, human quality translation still basically costs like $1 a sentence, right? Like 5 or 10 cents a word. There wasn't like this huge shakeup, despite the fact that the industry did shift to editing AI output already in the 2010s, right? So post-editing is now the majority workflow, especially with the higher volume use cases. So like, what is going on here? Like, why is, and we all agree that it's gotten better, right? Even the biggest critic of AI, of machine translation, would admit that in 2010, it was even worse. So what's going on? The interesting thing is that a lot of the segments, if you go look at your large post-editing workflow, and you go in there, you look at the data, a good chunk of those machine translations that are being sent to human translators are actually coming back unedited because they're already perfect, right? And in some cases, it's 10%, some cases it's 90%. And I think there was like this debate for a long time, like, can we like, pay them less if they don't edit and all this stuff. I'm actually quite against that. So basically, I think what we here all agree on is that if somebody has to look at something, it still takes cognitive effort, right? And so essentially the industry had introduced post-editing. Everyone's like, see, you're just going to like clean up these MT segments, right? And you're going to be faster. And it actually turns out it's not faster. It's like, and then, being the industry that it is, right? People just, LSP middleman just try to like squeeze the translator or something, right? Because we failed to innovate on technology. So we could basically never capture the real value from the fact that a lot of the MT was perfect. Everything still has to be sent to a human because yes, there is like a 10%, 20%, 50% of it that are bad, catastrophic, whatever. So, but we've been tracking this metric, and if you kind of look over time, right, if you go back to 2010, how many segments were perfect? It's like nothing, maybe 5%, maybe 0% in some content types. And I would say right now we're kind of at 50% industry average, right? Sort of middle of the 2020s here. I see this as an S curve. So there's a lot of stuff, automatable edits that, we're in the fast growing part of the curve right now. There are a lot of automatable edits, more things that machine translation should be doing better at, is going to do better at, and so on. And then what's left is the hard stuff, the stuff that requires AGI, sort of artificial intelligence that can do everything. We don't have that, right? And so there is like that stuff. It requires context. It requires research. All that hard stuff is going to be, a totally different battle. But so if we just kind of continue with the current paradigm, there's going to be this S curve, right? And that's where we are right now. And we will end up with a situation where like 90% of the translations are perfect. So, okay. But if we continue like we've been doing, where 90% of the translations are perfect and we still send everything to humans, we're not going to get any more efficient. Translation departments are still going to feel pressure. LSPs are still going to feel pressure because the productivity is not there, right? Like, so if we're not, 50%, 2x more efficient at 50%, we're not going to be 10x more efficient when it's 90%. And so we got to change something. And so basically the idea that all of us had was to add an AI check after the machine translation, but before the human editing, to basically learn, hey, these are the machine translations that are perfect and can skip human editing and kind of go right into the final document. This is very, very similar to how a TM match works in the workflow, right? That you have first the source segment comes in. Some of the segments can basically skip human editing in many workflows, and then the rest go to human editing. So this is fundamentally the workflow that we're talking today. What the AI is under the hood, how it learns, and everything. Amir will talk about that. But this is sort of the main workflow that we're talking about. There are a lot of other ways to use this technology. You can do it after the human translation. There's endless use cases, but this is the main thing that we're here to talk about today. And this makes workflows, 20% to 80% faster at the same human quality. If you're willing to, if you need more efficiency, you can even compromise a little bit on the quality, get even more. But this is fundamentally what we're here to talk about today. I think that's it from my end. So, Amir?
Yeah, thanks, Adam. So let me also quickly share my screen. Okay. So I will start exactly from where Adam left. So this is the workflow that he was talking about. So as Adam was mentioning, that there is almost 90% of the time that something is going unedited and still a human is there to review that. So if we have a model that can actually assign a score to each segment, and then we can automate that workflow based on that score, that the human does not have to look at those translations, then it can directly go to the end user, and then only the segments that are below a certain threshold will go to the post editors. So it's very similar to what match scores do, but it's not identical to that. So because the two are very different, what we're talking about here are the quality estimation scores. We are sending both source and a translated content to a model, and the model is trying to assess whether the source and the translated output is similar in terms of meaning, in terms of the word choices and all that. And then it's trying to assign a score whether the translation is good or bad. But when you talk about TM matches, basically you are just working with the source and trying to see whether you have seen this source before and do we have a translation of that. So 100% match or a lower match can actually tell you that, okay, now you have to work this hard on the sentence. If it's 100% match, it can go directly to the output. But if there is a lower match, then you know that, okay, 99% match, that means you don't have to do that much work on the sentence, and then the post editor can get some signals from that. But when we talk about quality estimation scores, there is a big difference here, because a slight change in the MT can actually lower the score a lot, because it's working on the idea that the translation is correct. So let's say if there is a negation in the sentence and the MT didn't pick that, so quality estimation score should be much lower for that. Maybe the poster reader does not have to do much to edit that sentence, but the quality score will not going to give that signal that you just have to do small work. So this is a big difference that needs to be understood. Similarly, in terms of edit distance, there is not a direct correlation with these quality scores. So there is a possibility that there is a big edit distance, but there is an alternate translation. So the two translations are completely correct, and then the quality scores will be higher for both translations. Or if there is a possibility where the edit distance is very small, you just have to change maybe one word, but the quality scores can be very low. So the differences need to be understood here. And also, because these are AI models, so you cannot expect them to be 100% correct. So there is always a small risk. And because we are saving cost, and if let's say 90% of the sentences are unedited, and we can save a lot of cost there, that comes with risk as well. So you have to really play with this threshold, that how much lower you want to go with the score, whether you want to say that, okay, 80% I can allow, or 90% I can allow, or I can go to 99%. That will change your cost saving, but also decrease your risk. But then you can say, okay, this is a project where I don't need that much high quality content, so I can reduce the score much lower, and then you can save more, but then the risk will be higher as well. So this is the main use case of quality estimation. But then in the future, there are more use cases, actually. Even now, there are more use cases. So as Adam was mentioning, that a lot of things can be automated, like post editing can be automated as well. So currently, the LLMs are basically very expensive. So quality estimation can actually help there as well. So once you know that there is a sentence where you need to do some edits, you can actually use quality scores to decide which segments to send to a LLM, and then do automatic post editing, for example. So there also you can use quality scores to save money, and you can automate your workflow based on the scores as well. So this is something that is currently not implemented in memoQ, but in the future, this is something that quality scores can be utilized for this kind of workflows as well. Similarly, if you are doing LQA, so previously when you do LQA, you have to do a sampling, and based on the sample, you do some kind of analysis. But it's not really necessary that in the sample that you are generating, you can capture all the errors that are there in the content. If you have quality scores available, then you can do a very smart sampling. You can only sample those translations where there are more chances of errors, because all the lower scores segments are basically supposed to have errors. So you can actually sample from there, and then you have better quality LQA. You can do much more better analysis, and then you can improve your MT engines as well based on that as well. So if you are doing quality estimation for all of your content, then you can really do much better on LQ. This is another use case of that. Then another use case which I don't have a diagram here as well, and which is not really what we recommend, is to compare multiple MT engines. Technically, you can do that, and this is something also you can do with memoQ as well. So if there are multiple engines, you can assign a quality score to both the engines, and then you can see which one is better. But as I mentioned, that the quality score, the idea of quality estimation is slightly different. So sometimes you will get a range of scores from, let's say, 0.9 to 1, and everything above 0.9 is good. So then there is a difficulty to basically say whether 0.95 is good or 0.96 is good. So you cannot really compare between two models there. But if there is a huge difference, definitely you can choose one over the other. These are some of the common use cases. And yeah, back to memoQ team.
Okay. Thank you, Amir. So now it's my turn to share my screen. So first of all, let me start with this slide that you can see here is a feature that will be coming to memoQ. So this is an analysis report for effort estimation. As you can see, we also have machine translation down here based on AI quality estimation scores. So this will also help with managing your costs and being more efficient. And now let me show you one of the workflows. So the use cases that Amir and Adam mentioned. So here in memoQ, you can actually pre-translate using AIQE. And then, so here, here selecting machine translation with the AIQE values. I'm selecting that I want to translate the German language. I'm using this service. And for example, I'm going with DeepL. So now I'm pre-translating using DeepL and also assigning AI quality estimation scores. And to improve efficiency, I can lock rows based on the AIQE score. So here, I set the threshold to 90%. So any segment that will be translated above a 90% AI quality estimation score, it will be logged. And then I will change the status to reviewer to confirm. And that's it. And now during post-editing, you don't actually have to look at those segments. And okay, so using pre-translation, memoQ is now pre-translating. And I will show you the results from the desktop clients. Okay, so now we are finished. So let me go down here. And now opening the copy. Here you can see that all of the segments above 90% were locked. We still have a few below. Most of these are not actually that bad. And you can also see what Amir mentioned at the end, that here you can compare 3 machine translation services that I assigned to the same machine translation settings in memoQ. So this is one of the use cases which is currently available in memoQ. So I think we can go into Q&A if that's okay, or maybe RP, you can add a few notes if you have.
No, technically, I think you introduced the most important things that Adam and Amir mentioned. So, as you mentioned, both of the 2 major use cases available in the application. So you are able to lock the segments based on AIQE values, and you are also able to choose between MT providers based on the AIQE values. And as you mentioned in the beginning, further functions are coming soon. So in the statistics and other interfaces, the AIQE results will appear and can be used in your standard workflows soon.
Great, thank you very much. And thank you for the presentation for everyone. We already have some questions, but let me just also ask the audience to, if you have any questions, just please share it in the QA part, and we will start going through them. So the first one is, can AIQE and memoQ AGT be used together? would we be able to get an AIQE score on the translation generated by AGT?
I think I can answer this right now. Or RP, you can take it. But
Go ahead, Levente.
yeah, so yeah, currently this is not available. So AIQE cannot score memoQ AGT, as AGT is in development and is its very own closed environment. But I would say that we will see if this will be something available or this is not something on the roadmap, I guess, right now.
But AI wise, it's technologically feasible, right? It's just about it's an engineering thing to wire.
Yes, yeah.
Yes, this is a very important point. So this is a common misunderstanding regarding AIQE, that it is only can be used together with machine translation. So it has a broader scope. So you can also judge human translation based on the AIQE, and you are also able to judge, obviously, AGT results in the future based on the AIQE scores.
Great, thank you very much. The next question is when this report feature will be available in memoQ? RP Levy, can you say something about that?
Yes, we plan it in the second half of this year. So that's the tentative roadmap for that.
Okay, thank you very much. The next one is, would you limit AIQE to certain content types? We deal with high-risk machinery. I'm unsure where we stand in terms of limit of segments that a human has not checked.
And then we can't hear you if you are muted.
Yeah.
Human error. Oh, well, that goes right to my point, actually. So humans are also not perfect, right? Look, I just forgot to turn the unmute off, right? The mute on. No, the other way around. See? So yeah, humans make lots of mistakes, and so you know, if it really is just about the quality, right? If it's purely about the quality, then I would suggest that you know, there just has to be an objective test, like, do we achieve higher quality this way or not? Could the efficiency gain be used to add maybe an extra review step if quality is very important for us, right? So there are all these ways to smartly allocate resources. In the end, efficiency and quality are you know, aligned, right? There's a reason you buy cars from Germany and not from, I'm not going to name a country, but like, you know, a lot of places are very inefficient, and it actually doesn't result in like a safer car just because they're less efficient in their processes, right? So the, you know, fundamentally efficiency is a good thing for quality. However, if there are contractual obligations, legal issues, etc., right, that's a different story. But that's not a technological or quality argument. That's not an objective argument. That's just, okay, the law is that way. And then finally, if the volume is very small, right, like here in Silicon Valley, you got tons of startups, you know, they're launching internationally. They have like their 3-word slogan, right? Like we have also ours, right? And it's like, you know, there's just not an AI efficiency there, right? Because it's so, you know, so there's not enough data to learn on. It would be more effort to train it than to just, you know, polish this translation yourself. There are a lot of cases where this is not a fit, right? And no one would claim that this is a fit for every case. But I would argue that in terms of quality, I mean, I don't know what Amir's experience is, but one of the biggest problems we have is when we get the data from the customer that their human data is full of errors, and the AI is being trained on that, right?
Yeah, I would say what in our experience, what we also offer is customization on top of the models that we have. And what we have seen is that you can customize for different content types, and you can customize for different domains, and also customize based on the perception of quality, because that's also very different from client to client and, you know, industry to industry. So based on some examples of the data that you have, we can actually generate more data. We can use the data to generate negative examples, what kind of errors there could be in the data, and then we can train a model that is just custom to your content type and domain, and that can work much better. But still, you still have to maybe play with the threshold to minimize the risk. So nothing can be 100% accurate because it's AI. So you have to still have some kind of risk involved there.
Okay, thank you very much. We have another one which says, what are the criteria for evaluating an MT translated segment as perfect? Only linguistics or also other criteria? For example, terminology, consistencies, standardization languages, regulatory languages, especially when the engine is not trained.
So our criterion is basically like this: would it be edited or not? So everything has to be respected, right? And if the model is approving things that shouldn't be approved, then that's a problem. So everything is covered, right? And it should essentially learn to incorporate all of that. And you know, you take, like, there's another question here about context, right? So right, there are segments that require context to translate correctly, and the model's just not receiving that context because of the way these workflows are and so on, right? And so you say, how can the model make a decision using context if it doesn't have the context? Well, what these models learn to do is that they don't learn, you know, they can't read your mind. They can't guess what the context is if it's not there, if it's not given to them. But what they can learn to do is say, hey, this is a segment that requires context. For example, it has the word they in it, and I don't know what the they refers to. I don't know if it's going to be in Spanish ellos or ellas, right? So we just have to reject this segment. So it doesn't know if it's ellos or ellas, but it knows that this is one of those segments that's kind of ambiguous, and that is doable, and that's what they do. Yeah. So everything is fair game, and the definition of perfect is according to the human linguist who was working in this workflow on this actual project at training time and evaluation time, and same thing on the you know, when the system is live, right? The standard should be just, you know, would a human have edited this or not, right? Otherwise, it becomes this very subjective quality conversation, which is endless rabbit hole in my view. Maybe Amir has another view.
No, I think it's similar. It's really dependent on the data that you are training on. So the data should have all the nuances covered. And if something is missing, that means the model will not be able to learn on that. But the kind of models that actually now being used for quality estimation are very similar to the architecture is very similar to the large language models. Only the parameters and the data is making them smaller language models, but they are efficient to do a particular task, which is quality estimation. So we are providing a lot of examples of what a good translation is, what kind of errors there are, and then the model is learning that. So a perfect translation is what the data is dictating it to say that it's perfect.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, can the settings also be higher than 90%?
Yes, of course, this was just an example, but you can go up until 100%. So this is perfectly possible.
You can go lower, right? So it's totally up to the setting.
Yes,
Okay.
because when you actually first set it up, you actually go from 0, and then you have to increase it up to the point where you where you feel it's correct enough. So yeah.
Yeah, actually that really depends on what model you are using, and because if you are using a generic model, that means it has a lot of data from different domains and different language pairs, and this threshold will vary for different languages and different domains. So you really have to do some tries and do some plug and play to see which is working for your content, and what kind of threshold is good to save you more cost, and then you can basically go with that.
Thank you. Let's just jump a few questions now, because you mentioned the model the AIQE is using, and we have a question saying that what model is used for AIQE? Something proprietary or third-party APIs can be hooked up as well.
I think that's a question for you, right, memoQ?
Yes, in our side, only TAUS and ModelFront supported currently. However, we are fully agnostic, so we are open for other providers too in the future.
Yeah, I would emphasize here that memoQ is a platform, right? So and that means the possibilities are endless essentially for what kind of AI you can pull into memoQ.
Yes, thank you. The next question is, it's interesting to know that AIQE can be used with human translations too. Would the score be shown live after each segment is confirmed by the translator, or would we have to run a quality estimation check afterwards?
Currently, if I remember well, please correct me, Levente, we have the AIQE score only for pre-translated segments and segments inserted from the AIQE rated hits. But in the future, we would like to add it in more and more places, so it will be available for that kind of use case also.
Right. And as far as I think how the implementation can be, both of those are possibilities, right? There's one thing is to alert the editor before he or she edits. The other thing is to alert him or her after he or she edits. And the other thing is to alert like somebody else, right? Who's reviewing. And that, I think that we're all here agnostic to that. That depends on the existing workflow and setup of that organization, right? Some folks have an independent review.
And basically it's a score that can be used for many different purposes as well. So currently we are doing quality estimation of translation, but we are also working on a model that can just judge the quality of the source. So that means you can actually first do a source quality check and see whether you need to do some edits on the source before sending it to the MT. For example, if you want to identify whether there is profanity in the source, can you edit that? So these kind of things can also be used. And then depending on the workflow, you can actually plug and play different kinds of scores in different places and then automate your workflow based on that.
Great, thank you. The next question is this like the MTQE in phrase?
Maybe I can take that. There are definitely similarities, right? This idea has been kicking around, so maybe I can sort of say what the differences are. That's fine. So, firstly, as we said, memoQ is a platform, right? So memoQ, for example, does not provide MT. They don't push their MT on you. You're free to use, any MT that's integrated in memoQ. And I think if we kind of look at MT, right, a lot of TMSs provide MT, but nobody really chooses it, because it's better AI, right? So right, in all the cases that exist, right, there's a reason that they also then provide the third-party options, because the third-party options are objectively better according to the customers, right? And that's for MT, right, which has been around for 10, 20 years. For quality estimation, it's a harder problem with much less existing data sets, research, and so on, vendors, right? I would say that's even more the case, where this is something that there really has to be a team dedicated to it to make it a success. I don't want to get too extreme here, right? But like, I have to change my name if I don't make this a success for you, right? And Amir's somewhat in the same boat. So it's really quite a different setup. And I think that's why ultimately the industry, has gone towards this idea of the platform and pulling in the best of breed vendors into a single platform. Before Google Translate, I was on Android, right? Yeah, of course, Google has its apps, but I was specifically working on the Play Store, which was then called Android Market, because they said, okay, there's things we can't do. We can't make the best social network. We can't make the best image editing app, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? And so we made an app store so everybody can be there in this platform. And so that's sort of like the model that we're going with here. And then and concretely, right, like one of the biggest differences is that both TAUS and ModelFront provide customized models. And so all the stuff, you know, when we're having those questions about terminology, content type, and so on, right? Like, well, you're only going to get that with a customized model, right? I mean, it's like if you ask a human to translate something for you and you don't give him or her any instructions, what kind of quality are you going to get, right? So customization is absolutely key to getting the value here. And so that is something that currently is provided in memoQ and is not provided in phrase via this the official phrase option.
Yes. Adam already answered it, but I would like to highlight that we strongly believe this backbone approach. So all of us know there is no silver bullet in this industry. So for different use cases, for different content type, for different language pairs, maybe other solutions working well. So giving the choice for the customer to choose the best for their needs, it's an important point, and this is a huge difference compared to the mentioned other solution.
Yes, thank you. The next question is, did I understand this right? To determine it that the AIQE is good, is on good quality, you make test evaluations, then you define the threshold of the quality, like Levente, you use 90%.
I mean, I would say that's basically correct. So it's determined by the actual quality of the final output on the actual data with human edits from that workflow. That's what determines what the threshold should be. It's empiric, right? It's essentially decided by the linguist's edit decisions.
Okay, thank you. Here's an interesting one, I think. What about privacy? As LSPs, we work with our clients' content, which should be not leaked due to NDA and so on. Can you please say something about that?
Mm-hmm. So we sign NDAs. I can't speak for TAUS, but I assume they also signed. You know, if I had $1 for every NDA I've signed, I'm pretty sure it's the same for them. So yeah, we sign NDAs. We work with a variety of organizations that are very security conscious, and so we completely understand that. And our policy is your data is yours. We don't do any mixing from across customers, like from one model to the other model. We have hard enough time making your data enforce your terminology. If we added somebody else's data in there, it would get even worse. It'd be like, I don't know, mixing TMs or something, right? You don't do that. So
yeah, so I think it's the same for us as well. When you're using the API, then whatever you are sending through the API, that is just to calculate the scores, and after that, everything is discarded. We don't use any caches, we don't store any data. But for customization purposes, you are sending some data, for example, then once the model is trained, then everything is discarded, and that model is per client. So no other client can actually have access to that particular model that is customized for you.
Okay, thank you. The next one is, when working with the text, are there ways to use AI to update and align the text with my editing choice mid-text? In other words, can AI learn my editing choice so I don't need to run through the entire text repeating the same actions?
So currently, so I would call this, like, let's call it adaptive quality estimation, is sort of what Andrew is envisioning. Currently, that's not there. And maybe I can try to explain why. So essentially what we're doing is that, but more on a yearly basis, right? So we're saying, hey, look, you've built up these edits. Now on like an overall year for the org, let us get this efficiency. The thing with the very small edits, like if you just have a few edits, there's so much noise, people make mistakes, it could be very specific to this document and so on. You don't really want the AI to be changing under your feet like that. In this case, it's better to take the efficiency, like the 50% efficiency, 80% efficiency on the year, but go a little bit more conservative within a specific document. I understand that that means this is only accessible to large organizations, and that if you're a smaller organization or you have very fragmented different content types, then this is not very accessible to you right now. That's the limitation. That's the downside of that approach. But for the larger ones, that approach has a lot of upsides. And I would say this is also like a big contrast to, let's say, a sort of the sort of Gen AI in pop culture, right? Where if you ask it the same thing 2 times, it gives you a different answer, right? So they have the temperature set up, and we sort of brought the temperature down to 0. And you say, if you send us the same thing, like 2 seconds apart, we're going to give you the same answer. This segment is either good or bad, and it's not changing under your feet. And that means, for example, when you do a human evaluation, now you've proven to yourself that, hey, this is actually giving me the quality I want, that you can be sure in a week from now that that's also the case. And if it were changing all the time, it would be much harder for you to sleep at night, for us to sleep at night. So that's sort of the thinking there.
Yeah, and also because you are trying to save the cost, and currently the AI is not that cost efficient. If you are sending a lot of requests, with every character type, that will going to increase the cost a lot.
Okay, thank you. The next one is, do you think AI estimation of quality will eventually have an impact on the all-over concept of quality in translation? If yes, will it be better or worse?
I would say that for me, at least, the gold standard remains humans. And for example, you see, we're not talking a lot about using AI for evaluation. Actually, we're both saying that the evaluation should be done by humans. So the decision about what is quality or not should be done by humans. And sort of the idea of, I don't know, raw MT or MT getting through or whatever, like that actually already happened, right? Like, I mean, 2010 or something, right? What was going through the Google Chrome, Google Translate extension, right? When you go to a web page on Android or something and it's not in your language, right? I mean, that, yeah, right. That the volume of that, I was maintaining that in like 20% of my time. The volume of that is like 1,000,000 times more than the whole human translation industry, right? And so what we have right now is, it's kind of like bipolar disorder. You have either, triple checked, ISO certified, like everything's like handcrafted, right? It doesn't matter. Even if it's post edited, right? It's like kind of expensive, roughly $1 a sentence. Or you have just raw MT and consumers are using it like crazy, and people inside enterprises are just throwing stuff into DeepL, and right. And you have these 2 extremes. So now all we're really doing is saying, hey, instead of having to choose between these like really different choices, one is like, and this one down here is like totally unprotected. You have no idea. You may not even be custom engine, etc. Now we're saying, hey, we can help you get something again in this range, but much more efficiently. And by the way, you are now also able to get everything in between according to the content type that you need. So that is a change, yes, but it's not a net shift down, because it means, hey, maybe this content we were going to do here, it was really expensive, we can maybe move it to here. But it also means there was content that was here, we were just going to throw it in the raw MT because there was no way we could afford human translation with the current inefficient processes. But now maybe we can edit the worst 10%. Maybe so, right? So it's not just about going down, it's also about coming up and not having to choose between these crazy extremes. And yeah, to be clear, sorry, so most people on Earth, like most people, you in the translation department, you only see the stuff that came to you, but you don't see all the stuff that people didn't send to you. Sorry, Amir.
And I was saying that the scenarios are also changing. So there is a lot more need of real-time translation now. The kind of contents we are generating, it's really massive. The volumes are getting bigger and bigger. So involving humans in everything is not possible anymore. But you really still need some kind of quality check so that you don't really damage your brand. You don't send translations that are completely wrong. So quality estimation can really have a big impact there. And then you can decide where to put humans, where humans are more efficient than the machines. But the rest of the times you just need real-time translations with some quality checks.
Okay, thank you for the answers. The next question is, what is your price strategy for this? Does it come with a subscription or is it priced per character evaluated?
From memoQ point of view, it's very simple. So we don't ask any extra for that functionality. So you just need to pay for the technology providers, but you are free to use this technology from memoQ.
So from our side, we basically offer both of those options. So either can be an annual package or more volume based. There is a minimum because we don't provide the generic model, so we only provide custom. So then there is a minimum there because we do customization, and that takes some effort from our side.
Yeah, for TAUS, again, both pricing schemes are available. Volume-based is our basic pricing scheme where you are using generic models. But even if you're using specialized models customized for you, then the usage cost is the same, but we add on top of that customization price. And the volumes are based on, like, if you're going higher volume, then there is a lot of discounts on that.
So, but essentially this is something, right? It's designed to give ROI, right? The whole point is ROI. So, and a machine, you know, if you're saving human costs and paying machine costs, then you're always going to come out on top. I think that's the thing. And it's pretty direct, right? So as soon as you start, you're basically saving money on every new project, right? So it's almost like by not starting, that's what's causing you to pay more.
Yeah. And we also provide a sandbox, which you can actually configure in memoQ, where 500,000 characters are available for testing 4 language pairs. And then you can decide whether it's working for you or not.
Thank you. The next one is, I think, a really interesting topic. Considering the speed at which AI is currently developing, would you still feel confident recommending translation as a field of study for someone starting their academic career?
Well, I guess I showed that S-curve. So I said we're going to be left with the hard stuff. I do think it's good to have it to understand technology, right? You're always better off. But I think there's like this misunderstanding, right, about what efficiency and productivity do to demand, right? So it's like there's this idea that, hey, if we, save a bunch of segments, that we're like cutting, right? We're making everything smaller. And it's really the opposite. It's like when you're more productive, you deliver more, people order more, right? Let's say TMs. There was the same debate about TMs actually back in the day. They tell me I was, it's like 1 year old, right? There was this debate about TMs, LSPs were resisting it, et cetera, et cetera. But essentially, if we didn't have TMs now, if all of you stopped providing TM leverage, TM savings, then orders would fall because buyers, there's all this content that would no longer be viable for them to translate. The only reason they can do, the manuals of the cars and stuff is because they have 95% TM. So if they had to pay 20x more, they'd say, I don't know, we're just not going to go to that market. And you can see this not only in translation, but in other areas of life, right? It's not like people aren't running from Switzerland to Somalia to do farming, right? Because they don't have automation down there. It's the other way around. People are, risking their lives to go pick strawberries in the countries where everything's automated. So I think it's super clear, North and South Korea, when I was a little kid, Berlin Wall, right? East and West Berlin, like we've done this A/B testing enough times to know that productivity leads to more jobs, not less. And it's not like we've translated all the world's content and we're running out of content. It's not like there's more than 6 billion people who don't understand English. So I think really like a lot of the problems of the translation space are more about the stagnation and the lack of technical innovation, the lack of ability to provide value.
Yes, I strongly agree with Adam. So we completely sure that humans always have place and will have place in the quality translation process. The role of the translator may be changing. So we see that post-editing getting more and more prominent. So this is I think, a healthy change, and it's normal. However, you are not able to neglect the human part in this process if you want to reach the best quality.
Yeah, thank you. I think we are starting to run out of time, so let me just get one more questions to you all. If I first pre-translate using my TMs and then I use MT on the remaining segments, will the model also detect terminological inconsistencies across those two types of outputs, TMs versus MT?
The model not, however, the QA check will.
Current implementation doesn't run on the TM segments. In theory, you can run these models on the TM matches, but that's not in the. It's usually not an issue because you would say, okay, we just take our matches. But I do think the consistency question, like having some idea of context across the whole document, and this kind of consistency is something that should come in the future, right? This idea of enforcing consistency. Good idea.
Thank you. And just one last question, I promise. There is a need to evaluate someone else's MT to determine whether it needs to be edited or not. Will AIQE support this?
So I think what it is doing right now is exactly the same. So you assign a score to an MT, and then based on the different thresholds, you decide whether it needs editing or not. So this is exactly the scenario where it's helping the post-editing or actually reducing the cost of post-editing.
I think maybe from our side, from the AI side, that's totally fine. Maybe the question is in memoQ if you're physically able to do that, because memoQ is typically the one inserting the MT. Are you able to just, I don't know, throw an XLIF file in there where the pre-translations are inserted already?
Levente or me can answer it. So go ahead, Levente. Maybe you are more experienced in it.
Yeah, so based on the question itself, yeah, it was asking if someone else pre-translates using a different machine translation service, can AIQE score that one? And currently memoQ it's not implemented yet to run like a separate AIQE session on an already pre-translated segments or document. So this is food for thought for us. Yeah, this is food for thought for us. But yeah, currently this is not something that's available, but we'll look into it, of course.
We in longer term, we plan to add AIQE as an independent step in automation. So in the future, it will be available.
Flexible.
Okay, thank you very much. For everyone, our time is up. So thank you again for joining. Thank you guys for answering a lot of questions and presenting for us. I wish you all a good rest of the day, and all the participants will receive an email when the recording is up, and all the questions will be answered there. So thank you again. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Cool.
Bye, everyone.